Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Real Swing. I've got myself a cup of Coke to start with. No tea or coffee this time because we're celebrating. What are we celebrating? We're celebrating 17 episodes of Real Swing. Yes, it is a milestone that everybody celebrates. You know, 17th episode. Whatever. Anyway, today you might have seen that I've got my kit dismantled specifically because what I figure I do for today, for today's episode, is to demonstrate to you, number one, just how troublesome it is to set up a drum kit sometimes. Number two, how long it takes. I'm not gonna like edit this fast or whatever. No, we're gonna do this in real time. And number three, my general philosophy behind actually setting up a kit. So it's gonna be an actual like informative video today, not something really stupid. So we're going to go part by part and show you why I arrange my drums in a particular way. So let's get started, shall we? It's going to be a very messy video because not only do I have to contend with all this equipment, I also have to contend with this microphone cable. Jeez. Hopefully I don't like trip on it and kill myself. Okay, so let's begin, shall we? Alright, there's going to be a lot of shots out of frame and stuff like that, but deal with it. The first thing that you always want to settle whenever you're setting up your kit is this guy right here. This guy is where everything begins. You want to set your throne at a height that you're comfy. Now, I have a very old school Tama throne that doesn't go very high. I've got it pretty much almost to the max height. It's sometimes not even as high as I would like, but it works for this particular kit because, yeah. So normally what I do is I actually measure my throne to be just a little higher than my knee. That's about roughly where I like my chair to be, so that when I sit, my feet are not 100% level, but they're a little bit pointy, downy a little bit, so that when I step on my pedals, they're about flat, and my knees are generally a little bit below, below my hips, and that gives me a really nice position to play. And I tend to sit on the edge of my seat as well, so that my thighs are, you know, unhindered by the seat. If I sit all the way back here, I feel like my thighs are like, you know, pressing against the chair. Anyway, so yeah, start the seat height. I get it about that high, about a little bit above my knee, right? Now, usually, traditionally, the first thing that you want to set up after that is your snare drum. But no, I'm going to set up the bass drum because it's big and it's out of the way and it kind of puts the position for everything. So you want to see where your bass drum is going to be pointing. You want to always look at the audience. You don't want to point it directly at them. You want to point it a little bit off the side. You want to see where your band is. But generally, what I do for my bass drum is I have it, these legs over here, I have it to where this bad boy is only just above the ground. All right, I don't want it to be like pointing really high up, so that when I slot in my pedal, which my pedal is slot in right now, it's only just hovering above the ground. Sometimes I have it a little bit lower as well. Now this bad boy here, this is my Gretsch Catalina Maple. This is my baby girl drum kit. I started with this bad boy over here, but I upgraded to that. This guy is a 20-inch bass drum, and I love 20-inch bass drums. The reason why I particularly adore 20-inch bass drums is because they're really versatile. I don't have a hole in the front. It's got a 1.5 ply in the batter head, little coated at the back. I haven't changed it yet. I want to change the front, the resonant head to a fiber skin at some point. But yeah, you want a thick head at the back and a thinner head in the front for that nice boomy sound. But it's very versatile because you can have that really nice round boomy sound. You get this big punchy sound. But the reason why I particularly love 20s instead of 22s is because it allows my drum set to sit a little bit lower in general. When we get to the toms, I'll show you what that looks like. But yeah, it allows my kit to sit a little bit lower, so I love 20-inch bass drums. All right, so I'm going to push this out a little bit. Let me get this out of the way. Tom holder. I don't roll the snare drum. All right, so where I'm sitting, I'll put my bass drum around about there, where my feet land naturally. Obviously, like I said, you want to make sure it's pointing in the right direction. Slot in my pedal. And I don't fasten my pedal particularly tight. I just fasten it just tight enough, right, so that it doesn't move around. And you get that little Nice little boomy sound. It actually needs to be tuned, right? And then after that is snare drum time. Now I use this normal Gibraltar snare drum stand. My personal top tip for setting up the snare drum, if any of you are like setting up drum sets for other people, point the three arms, point one of them towards the drummer. All right, so this point is always pointing at me because that's usually adjusted to where the angly bit, right, can either face this way or this way. So I like to have this one pointing at me because it doesn't interfere with my knees. All right, it doesn't interfere with my knees, and usually it also means that the little thingy, the spindly thingy, why am I calling it a spindly thingy? This thingy over here, the adjuster thingy, is at my right hand, so it's a little easier to adjust. All right, so I have it there. Let me get my snare drum. Oh, pop it on. Now, me personally, I like my snare drums to sit relatively flat. All right, I like flat snare drums, so have it round about there, and I have it pretty much as close to my leg and pretty far front of the bass drum, right? The bass drum is round about there, and my snare drum is actually sitting a little bit further in front of the bass drum. Now, the reason why I like this is because my style of playing, my posture of playing, my arms are not back here. I know some drummers who play with their elbows all the way back here, right? But my arms tend to sit just right in front of me. So instead of pushing, my whole seat back and, having my legs stretched that way, I still sit right straight down onto my bass drum pedal, but I have my snare drum pushed a little bit further to the front. So it kind of eclipses the bass drum a little bit, and just as far in front as it will probably go and as near to my leg as possible without me bashing into it. Now, I used to have my snare drum so near to my leg that the up and down motion caused holes in my jeans, so that would happen. All right, now height-wise, in terms of height, where I like my snare drum to sit is to the point where I can do rim shots with my both my hands, easy. Right, like I said, the standard resting position. I don't want it to be too high up here, but easy rim shots. But at the same time, I also double check sometimes because I tend to play both match grip and traditional grip. I actually make sure that I can also still do a rim shot with my left hand traditional grip without dipping too far down. That's about as high as my snare drum will go, right? So I want it relatively low down so that both grips are adaptable. I can do rim shot here, and I can do rim shot here if I wanted to, right? You want that. So I have it sitting relatively flat. I don't angle it to the front or to the back or anything. I have it relatively flat. You can tell, so the stick doesn't really roll anywhere. I can put it flat on there. It rolls a little bit because, the stand is old and a little bit wonky. But yeah. So both grips are applicable, right? Then the next thing I do is I pop my hi-hat in. So take my hi-hat. Now, as you can see, the way that I've arranged the feet at the bottom as well. So the snare drum feet are following the snare drum bracket at the top. So the two are pointing in front, the one pointing there. So then this, if I'm using a 3-foot stand for my hi-hat, this guy goes behind the foot of the snare drum. And that should put us in really suitable, comfy position. If I'm using a 2-foot hi-hat stand, which I don't really use, then I'll try and make arrangements accordingly. But this will sit, so the 3 prongs of the snare drum are like that, the 2 prongs of the hi-hat, and the third one like that. So they sit like that. So they have ample amount of space. All right. Now, I also like to have my snare drum and my hi-hat pretty close together. I have these guys pretty low down, the hi-hats, because I like my toms really low down as well, and that allows my cymbal to be really low down. So I have kind of about 3 inches of space between my snare drum and my hi-hat, and then I have it hi-hat overlapping the snare drum about an inch, right? It's just overlapping about an inch over the snare drum, all right? And I have it also, again, about where my foot naturally lands. So it's quite off to the side. I used to have it like way up front here, like that. But I felt, again, my foot was kind of, not in a comfy position. So I have it about there. So it's generally a nice straight line, both feet down. So as you can see, I've got my little V shape over there, right? Beautiful. So that's my hi-hat. Now, the way I like to test my hi-hat, whether I've got it in the right position or not, is I like to be able to still do this. If I can do my little heel smash splash thing that I do my hi-hat, that's about great. Now, one extra pro tip here is if you're setting up drums for someone, make sure that this little hi-hat tighter thing on the clutch is facing away from the kit. Now, why is that a big deal? Because if it's right here, there are instances where I want to play the bell of the hi-hat. If it's over here, it can sometimes be in the way. So you want it out of the way to where you're not actually going to play near it. All right, now the size and the gap of the hi-hat, I usually have it about a stick width. Right, the width of a stick is about perfect for me. It allows me to control that splashy sound. And lets me have a chunky chick and allows me to do that splash with my foot. All right, so that's the setup so far. All right, now let's move on to toms. Okay, so toms, for my personal preference, like I said, I love my toms really. Oh shit, mic came out. I told you this is going to be a problem. I nearly kicked my Coke over. I got to be careful about that. Maybe I shouldn't put it over here while I'm adjusting the drum set. All right, good idea. Let's move the Coke away. All right, this is still in real time. We're not cutting. Okay, so I've got my tom bracket here. And the way I like to do it is I like it as low down as possible. All right, I want it as low as possible. So I stuff it in. I don't use those like external tom mounts because I find it a little bit troublesome. But I pretty much put it as low as it will go without interrupting this the screw here. All right, and for this kind of a kit in particular, right, this 5-piece kit, I have it tilted this way a little bit so that my small tom is actually further away, and I want my mid tom to be a little bit nearer. And I'll show you what that does in just a second. All right, so now that we're here, small tom goes in there. All right, so I don't actually adjust according to the small tom. I actually adjust my kit according to the mid tom. I know that doesn't make a whole lot of sense at the time, but trust me, it makes sense to me. All right, because what I like to do, again, this going back to the reason why I love 20-inch bass drums so much. What I personally like to do is I love to have my middle tom kind of closer to the drum kit. All right, I like that this one a little bit nearer. So sometimes, if I'm not using a cowbell or something, I'll have this tom sometimes sit all the way in like that. That's usually where I like to have my mid tom. So once again, with the advantage of a lower bass drum, 20-inch bass drum, I can have the tom sit over the bass drum without hitting the top. All right, and I have this guy, so I'm going to tighten that, and I have this guy again as low down as it will go without bashing itself on the bass drum, and I have it pretty flat. So it's usually tilted just a little bit towards me, and I have it really nice and flat. Floor toms as well. The floor tom goes around about there, roughly about the same height as the snare drum, and relatively flat, tilted to me just a little bit. All right, so now as you can see, the small tom here may not have enough room. I'll pull the snare drum a little bit back, and now I'll adjust that guy. All right, up in there. So once my mid tom is in the right spot, I'll tighten that, and then I'll just tilt this tom to where it's pretty close to where the mid tom is. Adjust the snare drum so it's not bashing against the tom. Pretty close. So you see I've got that mid tom coming in a little bit, and I've got the small tom just a little bit further away, right? And that's where I like it. And everything is really nice and tight and close. And this allows me again to move pretty easily around the kit. I can go down the toms pretty freely. and it's really like very minimal effort to move. And there you go. That's the start of the setup. All right, so mid-tom, a little bit further in. I'll maybe take a picture later and show you what it looks like from the top. Mid-tom, a little bit further in. All right, and the last little sections that we have got to sort through is the cymbals. All right, so I'll go with the straight stand. So I've got 3 stands, I've got 2 booms and a straight. I still like to use straight stands. I don't like to use all boom stands. For my crash cymbal, sometimes I'll have a 22, sometimes I'll use a 20. For now, we use the 20. So I don't open the feet particularly huge. You don't have to if it's a straight stand. So the stand's pretty small. All right, and once again, for cymbals, I love them really low down. So I'll have it about there usually, right? And I'll have it again overlapping the first tom just a little bit, kind of overlapping the hi-hat quite a lot. Usually closer to the hi-hat side if it needs to avoid the toms. And again, this little screw for the clutch, crucial that you have it away so that it doesn't get hit by the right cymbal. Then usually what I do is I check the clearance. By checking the clearance, I mean just give it a couple of bashes. Make sure that it's not hitting the drums. That's great. And I have it again pretty flat. I have it clear that tom a little bit. Pretty flat and about as low down as I think it can go. It's tilted just a little bit towards me so that I can have a nice ride on it. And at the same time, it's sharp enough at an angle where I can crash on it just as easily. So that's my crash cymbal. Again, if it's a 22, I'll just push it out a little bit, no big deal. And then I'll have a 22 on this side most of the time. Today, I'm gonna pop the 24 on there. So, I'm using a boom stand. Now again, you don't really need a boom stand for this particular setup. So since my boom is not gonna be very long, again, I don't need the feet to be that wide. So pop it there, roundabout. Excellent. And then pop this arm out. You always want one of the boom arms to be hovering over one of the support legs. All right. So my boom arms are never very, very long so that the weight of the cymbal kind of still stays, you know, flat down on the stand. All right. Like I said, I've got the big 24. Pop him straight in there. Excellent. All right, now to adjust the ride cymbal, I have it usually hovering over pretty much the same like the crash cymbal over the small tom. I have it hovering over the mid tom. Again, relatively flat, tilted towards me just a little bit. And then if I have one more cymbal stand, I'll set it up right here, overlapping pretty much entirely on this cymbal as my second ride. But I'm not going to set that up today. This is just the setup that I'm going with today. And pull the wire out from the cymbal stands here. Okay, and that's pretty much it. All right, depending on how I feel, I might pull this. Yeah, I want to pull this guy a little bit closer. Just hovering over to the point where you want to check that you can get the bell with ease. You don't want to overstretch yourself to get the bell. You want to be able to go to the bell as easy as possible. And that's my setup. Quick, easy, painless. Took about that amount of time. Sometimes it requires a little bit more tweaking here and there. But yeah, mostly that's pretty much it. I personally love everything really close together, really nearby, overlapping if possible. And yeah, as you can see, the gap between my mid tom and my snare drum is really small because I have it tilted in this way a little bit. All right, so that's my philosophy of setup. And it's comfy, it's nice, it's easy to move around. If I have a cowbell, I'll now put it over here. All right, I won't put it on my bass drum anymore. I'll put it right up top here, sometimes over here if I want a cowbell. Again, if I have an extra ride cymbal, I'll put it right over here. If I have an extra crash cymbal, I'll usually put it over here or over here, right? And usually it's always overlapping. So I want everything as close in nearby as possible. And that's my drum setup. Yeah, usually flat, low, sit way up top, makes me look huge, makes me play better. That's how I set up my kit. Now take this knowledge and set up your own kit according to how you like. All right, finally to close, top tip here is experiment with setups. All right, you're never really 100% comfortable all the time. The interesting thing is you don't always play on your own drum kit all the time either. So the more you experiment with setups, the more comfortable you can get playing all sorts of different kind of setups, the easier it is to set up. Sometimes I'll go to a festival gig and I'll just sit down at the kit and play. I don't really care. You don't have to always I need everything precisely like this either, right? It makes your setup faster, and also, like I said, if you're playing a festival gig and you've got a band in front of you and a band behind you, you don't have time to set up everything, right? So you want to just sit down, play, and go, yeah, do it. Just play the music. And finally, last thing I'd like to say, if you are really hard pressed, like you want to change something on the kit to make sure you're comfortable, it's always the seat. So make sure whatever seat that you're using, you know how to adjust it quick and fast, and never leave home without your organic, farm-raised, free-range drum key. Never leave home without it. Buy like 20 and keep them in stock. Seriously, that's what I did.